So good and evil cannot be completely independent of each other. They are bound by relation. They are a spectrum. Yin and yang is a similar thing. Like, they're bound by relation to each other. And so the idea of good and evil matter doesn't hold up, right? The idea that, and so when you get into a discussion about destiny, right, and the context here being Pythagoras views the kind of two poles as necessity and power. They go on to explain that the Stoics made a flaw. So both the Stoics and the Platonists have the same flaw in their thinking in opposite directions. So they confounded destiny with providence, and they didn't distinguish the effect from its cause. Since these definitions conform only with the fundamental law of which destiny is but an emanation, or an abstract but perceptible thing that issues or originates from a source. This confusion of words had to produce, and in fact did produce among the Stoics, an inversion of ideas, which was the most unfortunate result. According to their system, a chain of good and evil that nothing could either alter or break. One easily inferred that the universe being subject to the attraction of a blind fatality. All actions are here necessarily determined in advance, forced, and thereafter indifferent in themselves, so that good and evil, virtue and vice, are vain words. So that was the Stoics' issue, but the Platonists did the same thing. The essential issue here is the Stoics would have evaded these results if, like Pythagoras, they had admitted the two motives of which I've spoken, necessity and power. And if, far from insisting necessity alone as absolute master of the universe under the name of destiny or fatality, they had seen it balanced by the power of the will and subject to the providential cause whence all emanates. The disciples of Plato would have evaded many areas as well if they would have understood this concatenation of the two opposed principles, from which the results universal equilibrium. According to them, the soul being inherent in matter and bad in itself, gave to evil a necessary existence, a dogma quite formidable, since it makes the world to be considered as the theater of a struggle without beginning or end, between providence, principle of good, and the soul of matter, principle of evil. The mistake of the Platonists is exactly contrary to that of the Stoics, which was in having confused the free power of the will with the divine providence, in having instituted it for the principle of good, and thus being put in a position of maintaining that there are two souls in the world, a beneficent one, God, and a maleficent one, matter. So in their case, they, in the soul, right, there's either a good soul or a bad soul, and the battle is between good and evil, right? But we determine later, one of the primary mistake is these two opposed principles of good and evil. They're seeing them as eternal independence, holding of themselves their proper and absolute existence, which is not the case. That's a flaw in their thinking, because they're in relationship, they're connected by relation, and as nature shows, there's good and evil in everything. Ultimately, and this is what another quote mentioned is, matter is governed by destiny, but the will is what controls the matter. And that's the idea of manipulating matter. That's the Philosopher's Stone. Our ability to use our will can change the course of something, can manipulate the matter into something good or evil. That's building yourself up into good or evil. No matter how you shake it up, you could look at yin and yang, or the idea that the entire universe is balanced. However you look at it, there's an equilibrium. No matter what, good and evil are connected but through relation. So they cannot be independent of each other, because you can have degrees of good and degrees of evil. So to view them as independent entities is wrong.